Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in again. So hello, Suzanne, Melvin, Andy, and Gabriella. Happy you're all joining us this evening. So we'll start by chanting the Ratana Sutta together. So we posted the link to the Ratana Sutta so you can all chant with us. And then after that, we'll be doing our first episode of Monk Chat. So for this, you have the rare and actually not very rare, the somewhat rare opportunity to chat with monks about Buddhism. So you're welcome to put in anything you want to talk about, and we'll talk about it. Unless it has nothing to do with Buddhism, in which case we probably won't talk about it. But you're still
might talk about it. We'll see.
Some more people checking in. Hello, Jens, Bobby, Demi, Tran, Victoria, Bante Akaliko. Yay! A monk joining in. So a monk who wants to chat with monks, and so maybe he'll also have some interesting things to say. So welcome, Bante Akaliko, to Monk Chat.
From Australia.
Yes. Gabriella wants to talk about the factors of stream entry. That's great, but first we're going to chant the Ratana Sutta together. So Gabriella's happy that Akaliko is joining us. Well, I think everyone's happy anytime Banteko joins anything. Carlina, hello. All right, so let's start with the chanting the Ratana Sutta. So we'll chant Namo Tassa 3 times and then chant the Ratana Sutta 1 time. And then after that, we'll launch into Monk Chat.
And you can find the text of the sutta. If you scroll all the way up, there is a link in the live chat from Sutta Central, so you can chant together with us.
And hello, Gautam. Welcome.
Oh, hello, Gautam.
Is Bella also joining in? Oh, we'll see what he says. Anyway, so I'll ring the bell and we'll chant together and then we'll launch into Monk Chat. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Yani bhutani samagatani bhummani vayani va antalekhe sabeva bhuta sumana bhavantu atopi saka chasunantu bhasitam. Tasmahi bhutani sameta sabbe metam karota manusiya pataya devacharato charanti evaling tasmahi nerakata apamata Yan kinchivitang itavahuram va sage suvayang ratanang panitang nano samang atitathagatenam idampi buddhe ratanang panitang Etena sachena suvati hotu Kayam viragam amatang panitam Yada jagasakyam muni samahito Natena dhammena samati kinchi Idampi dhamme ratanang panitang Etena sachena suvati hotu Yang Buddha Seto Parivanayi Suching Samadhi Manandari Kanyamahu Samadhi Natena Samona Vijjati Idampi Dhamme Ratanang Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Ye Pungala Tasatang Pasata Chatari Etani Yugani Honti Te Dakineya Sugata Sasavaka Ete Sudinani Mahapalani Idampi Sanghe Ratanam Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Ye Supayutta Manasa Dalhena Nekamino Gotamasa Sanamhi Te Patipata Matang Vigaiha Lantha Mudhanim Buddhing Punjamana Idampi Sanghe Ratanang Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Yatinda Kilo Pataving Sitosiya Chatum Pivate Bia Sampakampiyo Tatupamangsa Purisam Vadami Yo Ariya Satchani Avecha Passati Idampi Sanghe Ratanam Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Ye Ariya Satchani Vibhavayanti Gambhira Panyena Sudesitani Kinchapi Te Honti Pusapamata Nate Bhavangata Mangadiyanti Idampi Sanghe Ratanang Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Sahava Sadasana Sampadaya Taya Sudhamma Jahita Bhavanti Sakaya Diti Vichikichitancha Silam Batang Vapi Yadati Kinchi Chatuhapaye Hichavipamuto Chachabhitanani Abhabbo Katum Idampi Sanghe Ratanang Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Kinchapi Sokam Mankaroti Papakam Kayena Vacha Uracheta Sava Abhambo Sota Sapatichadaya Abhambata Ditapada Savuta Idampi Sanghe Ratanam Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Vanapagumbe Yatha Pussitange Gimhanamase Patamasming Imhe Tatupamang Dhammavaram Adesayi Nibbanagaming Paramang Hitaya Idampi Buddhe Ratanang Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Varo Varanyu Varado Varaharo Anuttaro Dhammavaram Adesayi Idam Vibunte Ratanam Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Kinam Puranam Navam Nati Sambhavam Virata Chitta Yatike Bhavasmin Tekina Bija Vimulhitanda Nibanti Dhira Yatayam Paripo Idam Visanghe Ratanam Panitam Etena Sachena Suvati Hotu Yani Bhutani Samagatani Bhummani Vayani Va Antaleke Tathagatam Deva Manusapujitam Buddham Namasama Suvati Hotu Yani Bhutani Samagatani Bhummani Vayani Va Antaleke Tathagatam Deva Manusapujitam Dhammam Namasama Suvati Hotu Yani Bhutani Samagatani Bhummani Vayani Va Antaleke Tathagatam Deva Manusapujitam Sangham Namasama Suvati Hotu Etena Sacha Vanjena Dukkhamupasamentu Te Etena Sacha Vanjena Bhayamupasamentu Te Etena Sacha Vanjena Rogavupasamentu Te. All right. Well, thank you all for chanting with us, assuming you actually did chant with us. And few more comments. Gabriela says Ratana Sutta is one of her favorite chants. That's lovely. Hello, Sally. Hello, Melinda. Melvin says chanting but butchering the pronunciation. Do I still get credit?
Yes, yes, yes.
She's a little more forgiving than I am. But since I don't have to listen to your pronunciation, I can forgive you for it. That said, I recommend looking up pronunciation guides for Pali.
Karma is intention, remember.
Yes.
So you have a wholesome intention, so bonus wholesome points.
So you should have the intention to also pronounce it correctly. That's also wholesome
He's
intention.
clearly the scholar monk.
Gabriella offered pronunciation guides. And she pointed out some major ones, good to keep in mind. Okay, thank you, Gabriella. Can you just come stay here for a while?
Yes.
Like, you sound amazing.
I agree.
Yeah, lots of sadhus. Okay, good evening, Michael. Akaliko says, LOL, there's a long history of butchering Pali pronunciation in Buddhism. This is very true. Yes, though that still doesn't excuse it.
It's totally okay. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Though if I was butchering the Italian pronunciation, she would say something quite different. Probably something about the importance of pronouncing words correctly.
Nah.
So let's see. Someone at the top had said they want to talk about the factors of stream entry. Yeah, if you want to. So at this point, we'll go ahead and open up for a monk chat. So please feel free, whatever topics of conversation you want to bring up, go ahead and bring them up and we'll chat.
So Trisha says, I appreciate your two different perspectives. So we have the computer here for a change. So here it is. That's what I were looking here and not there.
So for the record, that was not meant to be product placement advertisement for Apple computers. She was just showing that we have the laptop. Okay, so nobody has anything to talk about, so we'll just go ahead and end the live stream now. Bye. It was great. Oh, wait, here we go. Gabriella says, let's talk about the ways to recognize and overcome the fetters that block stream entry. Venerables.
Okay, so all the difficult questions to Bhante Sudhazo, I take the easy ones. Like, what time do you eat? Or what are the allowables?
Well, the most important thing for making progress towards stream entry is cultivating the recognition of the three characteristics and the Four Noble Truths. That's really the foundation of it. So see that everything is impermanent, unsatisfying, and impersonal. And notice how you create your own dukkha by getting caught up in desire, aversion, and attachment. So that's the path to stream entry. And so along the way, that means cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path, practicing morality, samadhi, and cultivating wisdom. And ultimately, that leads to developing the factors of stream entry, more or less by default. It all comes together with that package. So that's actually not a terribly difficult question. Let's see, Akaliko, best wishes to you too, Venerable. Looking forward to seeing you whenever we see you.
Yes, he was supposed to come here in May, and unfortunately they stopped all the flights to everywhere.
Which, given that there's a global plague, I'm not terribly surprised that they canceled the flights. Nonetheless, we were still quite disappointed because Bhante Akaliko is one of the great treasures in the monastic Sangha.
Yes, so...
So Gabriella carries on. How does one know the difference between Sakaya Ditti and Asmi Mana? Sakaya Ditti is overcome by a stream enterer, but Asmi Mana isn't gone until Arhatship. So there must be a major difference. Yeah, so the standard explanation is that Sakaya Ditti is believing that the particular components of body and mind are your true nature. So either a particular component in specific, or some set of components, or the whole body-mind complex as a single system. But basically, it's specific identity. So believing you are something. Whereas Asmi Mana is general identity, just believing that you exist as a separate individual. So Sakaya Ditti is thinking, I am this body, I am this mind, I am these habits, I am these beliefs, I am these tendencies. Asmi Mana, on the other hand, is simply believing, I exist. I exist. I am a separate individual being. That's the difference. So you can let go of the specifics, the belief, I am this, I am that, but still have the belief, I am, the belief, I exist. So that's Asmi Mana, and that's a much more subtle thing, and that also makes it much harder to break through. So breaking through, I am this, you just recognize that whatever this is, it's impermanent, therefore it can't possibly be you. So that's a fairly straightforward one. Really difficult, don't get me wrong, but relatively straightforward. But breaking through the core belief in self-existence, that's more challenging. And that's why it doesn't go away until full enlightenment. So what else?
The good news is that once you attain stream entry, then that's it.
Yeah, it's all smooth sailing from there.
Yep.
So the Buddha said that he picked up a little bit of dirt on his finger, and he said, the amount of dukkha that a stream enterer has overcome is like all the dirt in the whole planet. And the amount of dukkha they have left is like the amount of dirt on their thumbnail. So you don't need to worry about how difficult it is to go from stream entry to arhat. You just need to worry about getting to stream entry. Anyway, then there's some questions for you, Ayasoma.
It's because it's the easy one. So Trisha asks, what time do you wake up? I can certainly answer that.
As late as possible.
And she also says, also, how to describe the value of going into retreat to a non-Buddhist. The non-Buddhist can misunderstand and see it as selfish. So what time do you wake up? Featuring Sand. Now the viewership is going to like duplicate in a second. So we used to wake up at 4:30, but since the pandemic has happened and we don't have free days anymore, we decided to be kind also to ourselves and to the residents here. So we wake up at 5:30.
No, we wake up at 5.
We wake up at 5. Yeah, that's right.
So kindness means we get an extra half an hour of sleep. I mean, for most people that don't live in monasteries, getting up at 5 a.m. usually sounds nightmarishly early anyway. So the difference between 4:30 and 5 might be a bit academic.
Well, anyway, so we start chanting and doing puja at 5:30 instead of 5 a.m. as usual, so an extra 30 minutes that I'm personally quite grateful for. And the importance of going on retreat, well, I think it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier this afternoon. It's not something that you can really, that I think there's much benefit in talking about in terms of words, but rather is the more you practice, the more you go on retreat, the more you become a better person, the more people around you are going to start encouraging you to go on retreat because you become a better person, because you become a much more pleasant being to be around with. So even if they are not particularly interested in the practice themselves, or they don't quite understand why someone would go, in a place and sit in silence for long periods of time. I mean, probably if someone would have presented that idea to me several decades ago, I would have thought it was pretty crazy or completely uninteresting. But they will see the effects on you. Hence, they will start supporting or understanding it. So that's what happened, for example, with my immediate friends. From my previous life within this life. There is not one single friend of mine, at least that lives in New York City, that is interested in what I do. And most of my friends back in Italy as well are not quite interested in what I do in terms of doing it themselves. But at the same time, they've actually seen the big transformations in my mind and how I've become a better person. So they're very supportive of what I do. So I feel like their perspective is more, I'm not quite sure what you do, but whatever you're doing seems to have very positive effects on you. So go for it. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Do you want to answer Jens's question as well? Hello, Elaine. Hello, Jens. Hello, Tulia, Demi, Kevin, Yuritsai. Welcome. Do you want to take this next one as well?
Sure. You have spoken about reflecting on our own good acts in our practice. This is hard for me because I feel I am being arrogant, not humble. It feels self-indulgent to do this. Recommendations? Absolutely, yes. So for whatever reason, we are, I was actually somewhat raised in the same way. So there's that sense of, in Western culture in general, that one needs to be extremely humble about their acts, their good acts. But actually, the Buddha recommends to do the opposite. Not to be arrogant, to be still humble, but to rejoice and recollect on a daily basis our wholesome qualities, the good deeds that we do, and to rejoice in our own goodness. So as you start doing that practice as a meditation practice, so you want to take it just as seriously as you would take any form of mindfulness meditation. So it's really taking it as serious as an intensive vipassana retreat. Or like, and now for the next whatever period of time, I'm going to recollect how much of a great person I am. But by great person, we don't mean, oh, I make a 6-figure salary or whatever figure salary, or oh yes, whatever, I got a promotion at the job or whatever it is. But oh, actually, I've been really kind to my neighbors. Oh, now that there's the pandemic, I am trying to find so many different ways to help my family, my friends, my neighbors, my community. Oh, that's really great. Oh, I am practicing the Dharma during this period, this tragic period. I'm taking the opportunity to practice meditation, to deepen my knowledge of Dhamma. These are all incredible, wholesome qualities. And you start becoming your friend. Like, oh, yes, well done. Yeah, well done, Soma. Yeah, you're great. Well done. Keep doing this. Yes, yes. Oh, oh, yes, yes. Oh, I love you, Soma. Yes. And then you'll see that joy arises in the mind instead of like, oh, you should have meditated longer. Oh, why did you fall asleep? Oh, instead of this painful sort of state or false modesty, actually you start, there's happiness arising in the mind. And you're like, oh, when am I going to be able to practice more? Oh, actually supporting those people made me really happy. Oh, giving that donation made me happy, brightened the mind. Oh, I want to do more of that. I want to practice this path more and more because it's a path that brings to joy, to happiness, to delight of the mind.
Let's see. Then we have Gabrielle is saying, what sort of methods can be used to overcome the attachment to rites and rituals? And is clinging to Dhamma one attachment to rites and rituals? So you're referring to one of the 3 impediments to stream entry, which in Pali is Silabbata Paramasa, which I don't personally like to translate as attachment to rites and rituals because I feel like that, for one thing, it's not a very accurate translation. And 2, I think it completely misses what the Buddha is talking about. So first, the word sila. The word sila, we most commonly use it in the meaning of morality or virtue, but it also has the meaning of habit. So it's something you habitually do, a habit that you engage in unthinkingly and without reflection, without consideration. So your habit. And vata refers to any kind of practice that one has made a commitment to engaging in. And then paramasa means a wrong grasp of something, a distorted grasp of something, a misunderstanding of something. So Silabbata Paramasa is more a wrong grasp of habitual practices. That's more what the Buddha is talking about. So, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder is an example of Silabbata Paramasa manifesting as a neurological disorder, and sometimes a quite crippling psychological problem, not neurological, sorry, psychological problem. So, for example, someone who feels that they have to wash their hands repeatedly. Well, actually, these days, that's a good thing. So please, wash your hands repeatedly, it's fine. Or someone who has a ritual, like they think that they have to circle their bed 3 times before they lie down at night, or else they'll have bad dreams. So that's more the sort of thing the Buddha is talking about. And in the common explanation of this, one of the common explanations that's given is that this refers to believing that engaging in those sorts of practices will help you make progress towards awakening. Personally, I think that's a useful thing to reflect on. What is it that we think leads towards awakening, but actually doesn't? But I also feel like that's an excessively specific example I think that the Buddha is talking more generally about our tendency to get caught up in habitual practices without questioning them, without asking ourselves why we're doing it. So silabbata, so habitual practices, are not themselves bad, because one of the descriptions the Buddha gives of an awakened being is that they have silabbata sampanna, which means perfection of silabbata, perfection of habitual practices. So it's not that awakening means discarding all spiritual practices or discarding all habitual behaviors, but rather it means letting go of our wrong grasp or our misunderstanding of habitual behaviors and cultivating wholesome habitual practices which are supportive to the development of the factors of awakening. So I feel like that's a really important distinction that needs to be kept in mind. Silabbata paramasa, the problem is not the silabbata, the problem is the paramasa. So the problem is not the practices, the problem is the misunderstanding of the practices, the wrong grasp of them. So we're trying to replace silabbata paramasa, the wrong grasp of habitual practices, with silabbata sampanna, which means consummate perfection in our habitual practices. So a deep, wise understanding in how we take up and apply habitual practices. So those are my thoughts on silabbata paramasa. So as for clinging to Dhamma, you should in fact stop clinging to Dhamma once you attain enlightenment, but not before. So people commonly refer to the simile of the raft when they talk about letting go of Dhamma, and that's true. In the simile of the raft, the Buddha is saying like the Dhamma is like a raft that you use to cross from the dangerous shore to the safe shore. And that once you get to the safe shore, you leave behind the raft. The Buddha does not say to let go of the raft when you're in the middle of the river, nor does he say to let go of the raft while you're on the dangerous side. He says to let go of it once you reach the far shore, once you reach safety, then you let go of the raft. So very basic way of evaluating whether or not it's time to let go of clinging to Dhamma is ask yourself, am I fully enlightened? If the answer is no, cling as tightly to that Dhamma as you can because it's the only thing that's keeping you from drowning. Okay? Okay, that's enough. Your turn.
How many residents? Why are they residents? I love these questions. We currently have, we're currently 5 residents because we're all residents here at the monastery. So we have 3 monastics, actually 6. Yes, thank you, Bante. So we have the 2 currently present monastics. And then we have a 3rd one that is not physically present in this room, but is physically present in the building. And then we have 2 lay human residents, and then we have 1 kitty resident. Yay!
He's also a lay person because technically only humans are allowed to become Buddhist monastics. And also realistically, he would never take the ordination even if he had the chance.
Well, definitely not the precept of not eating after noon.
He's also not great on the precept of not killing or not lying.
Stealing.
Or,
yeah.
Yeah. His odds of successful monastic life are looking pretty low.
He's working on it.
Yeah.
He's good with the brahmacharya.
Well, that's because he's been castrated.
Okay, next question.
Oh, they asked, why are they residents?
Oh, why are they residents? Well, why are we residents?
Because we started this place?
That's probably why.
Also, I don't know about you, but I like it here.
I like it here too, although now it's really empty.
Yes.
So hopefully it will soon be a full empty cloud. And why are you residents here?
I come here and I feel home.
Oh, that's so sweet.
If you haven't heard Jen, because the microphone is, we have a very DIY sound system. She said,
She said she's here because she feels at home. Very sweet. And I think May is too shy to say why she's here. Why are you here, May? Pretend we're not recording this.
Oh, she said Sister Soma.
Okay, that's so cute.
Okay.
And why is Stan here?
Because there's food.
Realistically, yeah. And actually, Aya Suchita, the other monastic resident, is also here for Aya Soma. At least that's why she came in the first place.
Well, I invited her.
And she's still here because she can't leave because of the plague. Wow. So, and also Stan technically is here because of Aya Soma. Wow, I think at least I'm starting to feel a little left out.
No, we also have 2 resident chickens.
Three resident chickens, unless something happened today.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
so we have 9 residents, 5 humans and 4 non-humans. Possibly more non-humans that we can't see. We're not sure about that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Other questions.
That's also for you.
This says, I've also heard a stream enterer has a pristine vision of Dhamma and they are unable to break any major precepts. Which are the major ones and which are the minor ones? So it's not actually clearly defined anywhere in the suttas that I'm aware of. So it does say that a stream enterer will not commit any major moral violations, but they do occasionally make minor mistakes. But that when they make minor mistakes, they immediately repent of that mistake and vow to do better and will talk about it with a fellow practitioner who they trust. But I don't know of anywhere in the suttas where it clearly states which are the ones that a stream enterer would never intentionally break and which ones they might slip up on from time to time. I think the commentaries go into some discussion about this, but nowhere in the suttas can you find it. If you know otherwise, let me know, but I don't think there is anything on that. Let's see. Hello, Ki. Good to see you. Let's see. Gabriel wants to talk about the Chachaka Sutta. Yeah, we'll make a note of that and talk about it. We'll put it on the list of things to go over in the morning sutta studies. Then she asks, I'm trying to understand the difference between Panchakanda, so I know more or less how to tell the difference between the constituents of mind, mainly between Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. So Sanya is recognition. So when you have a sensation of any sort, almost immediately we label it as something. We decide what it is. So you see something, and then you label it, that is a red meditation mat. That's sanya. Sanya is identifying or recognizing an object, giving it a label, giving it an identity. Sankhara is mental and emotional activities and processes, such as thinking, emotional reactions, memories, imagination, and so on. So these are the more complex, large-scale mental activities, whereas sanya is very quick and near automatic. And vijnana is consciousness, which is the experience of me being aware of that. Okay? Do you have anything to add on that?
No, what he said.
Okay, do you want to take the next one?
Yes, I can take the next one very easy. Actually, very difficult. What's the general daily practice for monks, or at least at BI, Rockaway, Empty Cloud during a rains retreat? Is this period like a rains period retreat for BI? So I laugh because, first of all, actually, we just got into Empty Cloud Monastery, so we still yet have to do a rains retreat, or at least enter the Vasam at this place. But I'll tell you one thing, surprise, surprise. So Bhante Sudhazo and I are the working class monks. So we haven't created in this lifetime yet, anyway, the right conditions in order to actually do seclusion for long periods of time. So, well, he had actually matured the right conditions 10 years ago or so. But then he voluntarily, I repeat, voluntarily, and once again, voluntarily, he decided to start a grassroots Buddhist organization with me. And we started with zero support. So it was literally Bhante Sudhazo, myself, and my own $5, like literally $5 in a bag one day. I was like, oh, okay, I guess startup money. So the entire organization, it's like a miracle that was able to even survive 3 hours, 4 hours, let alone 4 years, and to come into this current form. But it also means that it's a little bit, it works in a slightly different way than a monastery that, you know, has a pre-existing support of a group of people that decides for it to be in place, or an organization that starts and that has perhaps support from also other monasteries affiliated to it in Asia. So we're independent and we're poor, but more money, more problems. So we don't get that much opportunity for formal practice, but we get actually a lot of opportunities to really practice compassion and renunciation and generosity and a lot of different other wholesome qualities that then support also the development of mindfulness and concentration. It's just a different way to go at it. So it does brighten the mind. You know, it's also like difficult, of course. For example, right now we're doing lots of live streams, and it's actually, oddly enough, we're quote unquote working more than what we did off the pandemic. I feel like a lot of people are not, are having the problem of not perhaps doing a lot of things while they're doing the quarantine. I was like, wow, I don't have time to do anything, to breathe. But by actually practicing equanimity and just keeping on going, then you start working with all these challenges, and the obstacles become actually opportunities for practice, opportunities for developing wholesome mind states. So I'm very grateful for the path. I'm very grateful for this practice, and I'm very grateful for Buddhist insights. You know, had it not been, all of these different things coming together, probably I wouldn't be in robes right now. Actually, most likely I would not be in robes. So I'm very grateful for the path. It's difficult, but it's also extremely joyful. That was long story long.
You also never actually answered his question of what our general daily practice is like.
Oh, how about you reply to that?
Well, it varies because we use different schedules from time to time. So for a couple of weeks, we were following a schedule where we were getting up at 4:30, chanting and meditation, breakfast, study, meditation, an hour of work, lunch, meditation until 5 p.m., take a little break, chanting and meditation until 9 p.m. or so, and then go to bed. So pretty solid daily schedule of group practice. The last few days, we've had a somewhat lighter schedule with more free time in the afternoon. So it depends. We change up the schedule here from time to time. So it depends on what we're trying to do, or whether we want to have a more intense schedule for a while, or a more relaxed schedule for a while, or more group practice, or more solo practice. So we have the flexibility to shift things around. So that's something I actually quite like, is changing things up frequently. Let's see. Gabriella has more technical questions. She says, I get that Vedana is affective feeling that is divided into positive, negative, and neutral, but is Sanya and Sankara cognitive and conative? I honestly, I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay, that makes me feel good because I had no idea what that meant. What is conative? Conative?
Venerable Kaliko seems to be running off to have lunch because he's in Australia and apparently it's lunchtime in Australia. Well, I'm happy that he joined in. He's a really lovely monk. If you ever get a chance to go and visit him in Sydney, Sydney, Australia, highly recommend it. He's a great guy, good monk, and he lives with Bhante Sujato, who's another good monk. Good people. Gabriella is worried because she has OCD. Everyone can attain stream entry. For some people, it's going to be a bit harder than others. That's true. But you can do it. And just keep doing your practice. And one day, something will open up in your mind. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just keep practicing.
Well, it's also actually a great trait, it seems, that you're putting, something that you're putting to benefit, because it seems like you're actually researching the Dhamma a lot and you have always great questions. So not everything that at face value seems like something negative is necessarily negative in itself. So it can be something useful, and it seems like you're actually putting it to the service of awakening.
Yeah. Let's see. Kevin is reminding people to support the monastery by donating. So thank you, Kevin.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, so without donations, we wouldn't be here today. So thank you, Kevin, for bringing that up. Let's see. Oh, wow. Lots of questions coming up. Wow. Let me try to get to where we were. Here we go. Melinda says, Bhante, can you talk about what the Buddha said? The seen is just the seen and the heard is just the heard. Yes, when we go over the Bahya Sutta in Sutta study, that'll be sometime in the next week or two. I don't remember the day. I never remember the day, to be honest, but I think it's all on the calendar. Or if it's not on the calendar, it will be up within the next few days.
Oh, Jim. Hello, Jim. Good to see you.
Hello, buddy. Hi, good to see you too. Let's see. Gabriela says, why is there less focus on the Mahadhatu elemental kasina meditation to break form down? Well, to be honest, it's not something. Mahadhatu elemental kasina. Do you mean the meditation on the 4 elements or the 6 elements? Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not commonly taught. Because the Buddha spoke about it fairly often. I think maybe one reason is because it's a bit less straightforward than many other meditation methods. So things like mindfulness of the body and mindfulness of breathing are quite straightforward, but the meditation on the 6 elements is a little more complex. It's a little more involved. There are some major teachers who do teach it. So Pa Auk Sayadaw teaches a 4 elements method, which is quite well known and quite popular around the world. So there's one major teacher who does teach it. But yeah, I'm not sure why it's not so popular, except for the fact that it is more complex. It's more involved. It's not quite as straightforward as some of the more common methods. I do practice the 6 elements meditation. Do you practice it? Yeah. So we do. Um, do we recommend the practice of Asubha meditation? You have to be really careful with Asubha meditation because usually when people start practicing Asubha meditation, which is the practice of contemplating the non-beautiful, usually when people start practicing that, they overshoot and they wind up practicing disgust. So the idea of practicing Asubha is to cultivate a calm, peaceful recognition of things as they are, without desire or aversion. But often when people practice Asubha, they go too far and they wind up just building up disgust and hatred for their own bodies, or disgust and hatred for other people, or disgust and hatred for their experiences. And that's not wholesome. That's actually unwholesome. So this is why I say you have to be careful with those meditation methods, because it's very easy to uh, develop unwholesome mind states rather than wholesome ones.
But that's mainly if you're a hate type,
Mm.
right? Because I would say if you are a greed type, meaning that most of your tendencies are in the greed domain rather, or like looking too much at the bright side of things rather than at the less fun side of things, then a Subha meditation can be actually very effective. Um, until you get to the point that Bante has mentioned. And then you have to kind of understand that what we're aiming at is the middle way. So if you're here at this this spectrum, and then you start practicing Asubha meditation, you want to get here. But if you start veering in the direction of hatred, then you have to pick up yourself and go back to the center.
Mm.
And I think there's that metaphor actually that Ajahn Chah that is, I think, is very poignant. It was very useful for me to hear, where someone was asking, if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, why do you? It seems like you're kind of constantly giving opposite sort of directions to people. And he was like, well, it's if you're, in a car with someone who's driving, and they're trying to stay in the middle of the road, but at a certain point they veer towards the left. So I will start going, go right, go right. And then if they go a little bit too to the right, go left, and go right, go left, until they are actually in the middle. So it seems that it's opposite directions, left and right, but fundamentally they are pointing to the same exact thing, which is in the middle.
Thank you. Then it says, Sally asks, regarding Bante's explanation of habitual tendency, the problem is grasping. How about unwholesome mind? For example, a habit of regret is not a problem either, because regret arises if we want to eliminate its kind of grasping too. How to balance the effort of towards wholesome and let them go. Regret, in English, this word has a fairly broad range of meaning. So actually, Gabriella says depends on the kind of regret, which is the right answer. So recognizing that you have done something unwholesome is good. That's your conscience functioning, hiri ottappa, your conscience, your ability to know right and wrong. So for example, let's say that you kicked the cat, and then afterwards you were like, oh, that was bad. I shouldn't have done that. That's good. If you then think, I will not do that again, even better. If you then think, I am a horrible person, fail. That's not wholesome, because now you're just cultivating self-hatred. So this is where we have to be careful with regret. Another example is if we then start thinking, I am a bad person who does bad things. Also fail, because you're cultivating a self-identity, which is built around seeing yourself as a bad person. And that can actually strengthen your tendency to do bad things. So we need to be very careful when approaching something like regret. Also, regret commonly involves an element of, again, this self-hatred, this thing of thinking that we're a bad person, or falling into sadness and despair of like, oh, I always do so many awful things. So none of that's wholesome. Wholesomeness is recognizing I made a mistake and I'm going to try not to do it again. That's all in the domain of the wholesome, and it's all done with a peaceful mind, even a joyful mind. Because there's the joy of recognizing that you know right and wrong, and the joy of knowing that you're committed to trying to do what's right. So that's all perfectly fine. But if you're getting into like the sad, despairing, self-hating kind of regret, that's very unwholesome. That's not worth it at all. So sometimes in the past, people have asked me about regret, and I've just directly said, "Oh yeah, I don't have regret." And then they got all horrified because they thought I was saying that I don't have a conscience. But that's not what's meant by that. What's meant by that is I don't get into the sorrow, despair, self-hating kind of regret. But if I make a mistake, I know that I made a mistake, and if I'm on my A game, then I commit to not doing it again. Do you have anything you want to say about that?
No, I think you covered it all.
Okay.
There are some great practices actually to overcome guilt, in case you're interested, but maybe we can cover it another time.
Um, let's see. So Gabriella was giving some comments about Hiri and Otapa, which are two different shades of conscience. So in English, we just have one word, conscience, which includes the meaning of both of these words in Pali. So both Hiri and Otapa together mean conscience. But in English, we just have one word, whereas there's two in Pali. Yudi Tsai says, thank you guys. See you soon. Bye-bye, Yudi. Tina, ooh, you can do this one because it's about emotions and things, and you're good with those.
All right. So Tina asks, my husband recently got furloughed. What's that mean?
It means like he's not working, I think, basically. And like often when someone's furloughed, like it's not like laid off in the sense that they're technically not fired, but they're not being given any work, and they're also usually not getting paid. So it's kind of like, it's basically like being fired, except that the company will probably start giving you work again at some indefinite point in the future. At least that's my understanding. I might be wrong.
He feels betrayed and feels angry. How should he overcome this feeling? Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that your husband is going through this, and that obviously you are going through this too, because I imagine it's also impacting your life as well, and your emotions, of course, since you're his partner. And it comes with acknowledging things, that it's really bad, awful situation. So unfortunately, there's not a quick fix to it. If someone is not a practitioner, if your husband is a practitioner, then he might be able to get back to what he has cultivated in the path. If he's not a practitioner, it's also, I think, okay to, rather than expecting him to overcome things, just to be there for him. So allowing him to go through his emotions, allowing him to feel all that you've said, to that betrayed and angry. So just the presence sometimes, whenever we feel upset, whenever there's, we feel like we're the victims of some sort of injustice, even though we kind of already know the rational answer that it's kind of like a waste of time, or like that we're harming ourselves, etc. Sometimes if people are telling us that while we're going through those emotions, it creates even more frustration because it feels like nobody is there listening to our experience. But if instead someone is there, not trying to fix anything, not trying to give any kind of, you know, quick fix solution, but just being present and listening and going, yeah, this situation really sucks, but I'm here for you. You can count on me. And remember, everything is impermanent, and we've been through crappy times in the past too, but we overcame together the difficulties, which is why we're here right now. I'm pretty sure if you're married, that you've been through that. It wasn't, always like a kind of everything perfect type of situation. I'm pretty sure that you've experienced obstacles and then you've overcome them. So getting back to also the principle of impermanence that we very often forget, that just like pretty and comfortable and beautiful things are impermanent and create suffering, also the suffering is impermanent. So also this moment of distress will cease. Also the anger of your husband will cease. Also all his emotional distress will cease, will stop at a certain point. So I would recommend just being there, present, and caring. Just trying to really practice loving kindness right now rather than fixing things up.
And Juni said we're amazing. That's very kind.
I would say you guys are amazing, that you're coming morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening, morning, evening. So impressed. Actually, that's what keeps us going too. So it's like such a beautiful energy. Honestly, I would have never imagined that I would have enjoyed online gatherings to one degree or another, but it's actually been really beautiful and has also helped us, keep our sanity during this tragedy. Like whenever I kind of open any type of instrument, technological instrument, strong emotions appear. So the fact that there is a sort of kind of container where we're all keeping ourselves sane is beneficial for every single one of us in the equation.
Okay. And Maria says, hello. Hello, Maria. Sally is apologizing because she says her English is not that good. I think we've been understanding you pretty well so far, but I do want to say if there's another language that you're more comfortable communicating in, we do have a person who is a native Chinese speaker, a native Burmese speaker, a native Italian speaker. She's also quite good with Spanish. For me, she says she's not, but she is. For me, I know Pali, but unless maybe that's not so useful to you. I'm learning Chinese, but it's taking me a while. So if you want Chinese, we have a resident who can help you communicate through Chinese. So if you fit any of those languages, feel free to use one of those languages, and we'll translate your questions and answer them for you. But to be honest, your English is fine. I feel like we've been understanding your intent. But if you feel like we're not quite communicating, again, feel free to use one of those other languages.
Yeah, and my English expression is also not that good, so we're in good company.
Yeah, it's hard to tell sometimes, but English is Ayasoma's second language.
I can speak like this though, and then it's more credible.
Her English is amazingly good. So it's almost fluent, like it's almost native level of fluency. So sometimes people don't realize that it's not her first language. So let's see. Gabriella continues to give explanations of polytechnical terms in the live chat. Awesome.
Yeah,
yeah.
You skipped a few questions.
Okay. The live chat's jumping around a bit, so I'm getting a little mixed up. Where can we go? Here we go. Melinda. Hello, Melinda. Melinda says, I have experienced some supernatural experiences. I try to acknowledge and let go, but it is nagging in the back of my mind. Can you say what the Buddha said about this? So first off, recognize that these sorts of experiences are very common. So a lot of people, they have some kind of supernatural or far out experience, and they think it's rare, or they think it's weird, or they think it's unusual, but it's not. It's very common as people engage in Buddhist practice that every once in a while, usually not that often, but every once in a while, something weird happens. And you're just like, oh. And especially if you're starting from a scientific materialist background, it can be a little bit unsettling when weird stuff happens. And you're just like, well, it turns out I actually really deeply believe in scientific materialism, but my direct experience is contradicting those deep beliefs. Or maybe you're not starting from scientific materialism. Maybe you actually already had belief in supernatural things. And then when they happen, often people get too excited. They're like, yay, I'm psychic. I'm so cool. I'm so cool. But no, it's just a perfectly normal thing that sometimes happens as a side effect of Buddhist practice. But it's completely beside the point. It has nothing to do with enlightenment. If you want to, you can cultivate all kinds of wild, wacky, and weird mind powers, but they won't bring you one step closer to enlightenment. So that's the thing to remember. If supernatural things start happening to you, just remember, this has nothing to do with enlightenment. It's okay if it happens. It's okay if it doesn't happen. Either way, it has nothing to do with enlightenment. So I'm not going to waste my time getting caught up in these things. Okay.
He asks a question that is into different messages.
I see. Do you want to answer this one?
So Ki asks, I've done contemplation / mindfulness of death before, but I didn't feel much from it. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. Maybe it's because I plan to be cremated, so corpse decomposition doesn't really worry me as much. And to me, it's just the body decomposing naturally. Should I care more about bodies decomposing? How about we both answer it? You give your answer first, and then I see if
Okay, that's a cop out.
I mean, I can if you want. But.
So first off, contemplation of death, there's many different ways of doing it. So if the way that you've been doing it isn't really doing anything for you, then experiment with other ways of practicing contemplation of death, mindfulness of death. So there's a few reasons why we do that practice. The main one is to eliminate our fear of dying. That's the main reason. It's accepting that death is inevitable and therefore something that we need to come to terms with. And it's also recognizing that ultimately death is not a problem. It's just an aspect of samsara. It's not something which is inherently a problem. It's only a problem if we have aversion towards it or fear of it. So practicing awareness of death is just to help us let go of that fear and aversion towards death. It's also sometimes used as a way of building up a sense of urgency in our practice so that we don't waste as much time. Because one of the problems that sometimes arises in Buddhist practice is laziness. Of like, if I don't get it in this life, I've got infinite lives, I'll get it one of these times, it's no problem. And that's technically true from one perspective. But from another perspective, right now we've got pretty good conditions. And after we die, who knows where we're going to wind up? We might wander through planes of misery for countless eons. And that would suck. So while we're alive with pretty good conditions, let's try to make the most of it. So it's another use of mindfulness of death, is to help encourage us to keep practicing. And a third use for mindfulness of death is to help develop the perception of not self. the anatta sanya, the recognition that the body is not who we are. And that's actually, as I understand it, the purpose of the body decomposition meditations. It's not because there's something special about decomposing bodies, but rather if you visualize your own body dying and decaying and disintegrating and returning to dust, which then mixes back with the soil until there's nothing left at all, then it helps us recognize that the body is not who we are, that it's just part of the earth, which came from the earth and will return to the earth. There's actually a really lovely Buddhist quote from the Bible. The Bible actually has a handful of Buddhist things in it. And one of them is one of the protagonists of the Bible, I forget which one, because I haven't read it in like 25 years. One of the protagonists says, "From dust you came, and to dust you will return." So this body is made up of dirt, and it's going to go back to being dirt. So you can use the decomposition meditations as a way of seeing that this body is just dirt coming together and then disintegrating again, returning to the soil. So that then we can see that then this body is not who I am. It's just a natural process. Those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Bante. I would just add to that sometimes, especially actually these times, can create a great opportunity for this practice not to be that abstract, but actually quite personal. So I would say that pretty much every person has some kind of degree of fear also of contracting this virus. And because of the current, weather, where there's so many different colds coming in the atmosphere, as soon as someone is slightly sick, they start getting paranoid that they have the virus. And actually, even though I never had too much of a sort of fear of death or fear, I had fear of sickness, but in a different way, not connected, more fear of like having pain. But at a certain point, I got this like intense cold last week or 2 weeks ago. I lost sense of time. I have no idea when it was. Maybe it was a month ago. Anyway, but I remember really for the first time looking at this experience and having this sense of, wow, this body is extremely fragile. Wow, my lungs might be all full of these fluids. Maybe I actually have pneumonia and there's nothing available right now. There's no oxygen machines, etc. I'm going to die. So these are the last couple of days, perhaps last couple of hours. And I started having this kind of anxiety of, wow, like it became really real in my experience. And then actually embracing it, going, well, how do I want to spend the last moments of my life? And I started calling my parents, doing acts of kindness, practicing better. But then at a certain point, it's interesting because you also kind of, if you don't keep the practice up of recollecting your own death and recollecting the fact that you're of the nature to get sick, etc., as my body started getting better, I started noticing the delusion reappearing in the mind. So I haven't called my parents in 2 days.
Oopsie.
Yeah.
Okay, time to call.
And I got a little bit lazy too. So, but it's a great teaching in terms of really understanding the workings of the mind, of how we kind of always tell ourselves, oh yeah, but I want to be cremated. So, I'm not really like, I don't care too much about the decomposition, etc. And all this is just because we're kind of like approaching it in a kind of watching the movie thing. But when you're actually experiencing it and realizing what it means to lose everything that you care about, that actually creates a sense of urgency in developing wholesome mind states, in really putting right effort through body, speech, and mind. So thank you actually for bringing this up. So I'm going to recollect death again these days, and also recollecting the death of the people that we care about. I was also doing a lot the death, recollecting the death of my parents, recollecting the death of my siblings. One of my brothers is currently sick. It became incredibly real now that he's just slightly over 40. He's a relatively young man, and I was like, wow, maybe I'm never going to be able to see my brother again. Hmm, yeah, can happen any moment. So right now that the sort of struggle is real, I think it's actually a great opportunity for us to really look at this concretely rather than in an abstract way, rather than, oh, I want cremation, or I want to become compost. That was my fantasy. I was like, no, I actually don't even want the casket. I just want to be, like in the backyard. So then we can have a nice garden growing on top of me, and great fertilizer. So it's all just like sweet, cute little thoughts, but they're not terribly. That's not contemplation of death. Contemplation of death is really, really looking at our experience, our existence, and realizing, hey, time is running by. Better take advantage of this opportunity. All the time that I spend getting anxious, angry, daydreaming, spacing out, oversleeping again. All of that is such a waste of time. When we actually have the Dharma, we have such incredible opportunities to practice and to be of benefit to ourselves and others. Very short, precious amount of time.
Maybe you could lead a session on mindfulness of death one of these evenings.
Sure.
Okay.
I can try.
Okay. Also, a couple people are asking you to teach guilt meditation. I think they mean letting go of guilt, not creating guilt.
Not actually creating the state of guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Gabriella asked how to address restlessness and anxiety when meditating. Well, the Buddha gave a very direct answer to this. He said, contemplate tranquility. Not very useful, is it? But it's very pointed. So one thing that's actually really helpful is to relax. Relax your whole body. Because often restlessness, whether in the form of excessive thinking or anxiety, is accompanied by tension in the body. So when you relax all the tension in your body, then you notice that the restlessness starts to dissolve a little bit, starts to dissipate a little bit. That's one thing that can be really helpful. Another thing that can be remarkably helpful is walking meditation. Do walking meditation. Okay, let's see. There's still quite a bit left, and we're getting close to 9 o'clock. So we'll see how much we have time to get through. Gabriella asks, how do you train the mind to be more malleable and wieldy in order to overcome obstinacy and stubbornness? Do you want to answer that? How to make the mind more flexible so that it's not as prone to being stubborn.
So, through practice, that's the long story short, fundamentally practicing over and over again, but also creating that attitude of the mind of generating the possibility that you are wrong. So we are very attached to our views, which is why we can get very stubborn. But always training ourselves to go like, am I possibly wrong with this? And delving, like really analyzing the topic and putting yourself in the other person's shoes, but not just like metaphorically or superficially, like actually trying to understand as much as possible, like all the literature that is available that you can find on the other person's view. So, for example, when, a couple of days ago, and I'm opening this can of worms, but I'm also like closing it in 2 seconds. So when I first encountered the sexist BS, let's call it for what it is, the sexist bullshit in in Buddhism, pardon the French, I was like, this is bullshit, that's it. But then I was like, actually, no, that's not an appropriate response, because maybe there's actually some truth to this that I don't know, like, let me try and see this. So I was like, okay, I really think this is bullshit, but let me kind of see what are the points raised to support, for example, not being in favor of bhikkhuni ordination, or the ideas behind the inferiority of women. I was like, let's take it as a working hypothesis. Maybe I'm actually inferior by birth. Okay. Let's see. Instead of saying that it's not like that, let me do some research. Let me do some research. Let me read. Talk, ask questions, really try to figure out what the other person's point of view is. And I really took that on, and eventually actually still came to the conclusion that I had before, that it is in fact bullshit. But with now, like, my sort of understanding comes from a place of knowledge rather than from a place of sort of stance. And in the process, actually, I was able to grow in the Dharma, because it raised so many questions while I was, doing this research. Like, for example, the ones that I brought up a couple of days ago. What is good karma? What is bad karma? What do I think? Why do I think this? Why do I think that? Why do these people think this way? What does it even mean to be a monastic? All of these questions that created the conditions for more wisdom to arise, and for my views on the subject matter not to be just simple ideas that I was grasping on, but rather things that I was putting in parallel with Dharma. So going, well, how can I practice in accordance to Dhamma? So what does the Dhamma say? And what is in conflict with Dhamma, and what is in accordance with Dhamma? So that's, I would say, my 2 cents, 3 cents. I don't know how many cents. A few cents.
Great.
On the motto.
Great. And Gabriella says, we're here for you too, Venerables. Never forget that. Much metta, everything is going to pass. You're very sweet. That's very kind of you. Let's see. Maria asked for a lesson in Spanish. So I should clarify, when I said that Ayasoma is good with Spanish, she's good at reading Spanish. She's not so good at speaking it.
Yeah, I'm not even good at speaking Italian anymore either. I can't speak Italian, I can't speak English. It's a tragedy. Such a sad story.
We actually had a fluent Spanish-speaking monk here recently, but he went back to California right around the time that the pandemic started. We tried to get him to stay longer, but he had some duties to take care of.
And he has actually a Spanish Dharma YouTube channel. I think it's called El Monje en Español or something like that. Anyway, if you put Monje Español, I think he comes up.
Yeah, his name is Bhante Sanata Vihari, which I'll probably have to type that up for you in a bit. He lives in LA, in the LA area. Let's see. Some Melinda was emphasizing that she means residue ghosts. Yeah, that's quite common. Again, it's not something to worry about. It's just part of being human, is that some humans can see ghosts and some can't. Again, it's just the way things are.
And Andre has something to say about that. It's making really weird sounds.
Yeah, so Andre mentioned that Meichi Kao was instructed to stay in her own body-mind. That's very important. So Meichi Kao, as I recall, she had a problem of habitually astral traveling, but that's actually not so useful when you're trying to practice Buddhism. So we really try to keep our attention grounded on our own body and mind. Sally asks, in consciousness elements, Bhante mentioned mental subject manifesting in consciousness. Could Bhante please give more explanations about mental subject? So I probably used the word mental object, which is any thought or emotion or mental process of any kind. That's what I call mental object. The mind seeing a cat is the mental object. Any sensory impression is a mental object in that it's something which appears in the mind. But then you ask, where is the mind? Well, that's for you to figure out. You can spend a whole meditation period just sitting there asking yourself this question, where is the mind? This is an actual meditation method. It's a form of insight meditation. It is, well, mind-blowing. So try it out. Try it out. Try to figure out where the mind is through direct experience, not through logic. So just sit, ask yourself, where is the mind? And try to feel where the mind is.
Delicious meditation.
Yeah, lots of fun. Gabriella asks, what are the differences between nimittas? Oh boy, I think you're going to have to save that one for the next monk chat because that's not a short answer. A long story short, oh God, no, there is no long story short.
Another, I think that
next time. Yeah. Melinda says
she's gonna write to you privately.
Okay, yeah, Melinda, we'll talk in private. That's best. Key says losing sense of time too. Also paranoid if I have a small sniffle, and I have a list of people to call and lots of Buddhist practice and recollections to do.
Great. So this is your practice. See, so you know exactly what to do in your meditation practice, which is okay. Let me clarify. Not become anxious by going like, oh my God, I have so many people to call. Oh my God, I'm gonna die soon. No, it's not that. But actually, getting comfortable, like with the awareness of that, like really understanding. I am of the nature to die. I am of the nature to get sick. Everything I love and everyone I love will be separated from me, and I am the heir, the relative, etc., of my karma. So those daily recollections are really powerful when they become something that you are relating to personally, not just intellectual thinking, but something that is concrete. And you will see some anxiety arise. You will see some like really strong emotions arise. And your duty is to become comfortable with them while realizing the sort of tragic suffering, like the real suffering that we all experience as human beings. This is the suffering that we're trying to transcend. We're not trying to transcend the suffering that, oh, I broke my nail. Oh my God, it's like so terrible. Like, oh dear, so much dukkha. No, we're actually like talking about old age, sickness, and death. This is the suffering of the human condition since discoverable at the beginning. So this is once again a great opportunity because it's so real, so tangible, so palpable, so much in the air with this pandemic that we can face it, we can see it, and become then better human beings, much more committed to the practice, to the Dhamma.
Okay, then there's some well-wishing for your brother.
Thank you so much. Sadhu.
Sally requested Majjhima Nikaya 143. Yes, I just put that on my list. So
wonderful. Great.
we'll get around to it sometime in the next few weeks.
This one, complete tranquility. Okay, also that we can...
I think that contemplating tranquility, that's going to have to wait for the next monk chat, because it seems we should do more monk chats. I agree. It seems like it's a popular thing. So I think maybe we can start doing this regularly.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm down with it. Cole Jackson says, what would you guys consider to be the most meaningful sutta for your practice? All of them, to be honest, because every one of them brings out another angle or side to consider. That said, the Sabbasava Sutta was very deeply transformative for me in particular, because it gives a sense of the variety of different approaches that we need to take in our practice. Emphasizing that there's not a Swiss Army knife method, but rather we need to consider what's actually relevant right now. And it's not necessarily what was relevant yesterday or even a minute ago. So that was quite helpful for me. The Kachanagota Sutta was also very transformative for me in giving me a deeper understanding of emptiness. But realistically, I really can't pick one, because like whenever I read the suttas, I find something wonderful. So the most meaningful sutta for me is all of them. How about you?
Definitely, as Bhante mentioned, the Sabbasava Sutta has, mind-blowing. I read it and I was like, so much Dhammasukha. Really kind of shaped the sense of what I had to do, what I had to cultivate, and as Bhante mentioned, the different approaches, and that it wasn't like sort of straight cut, that a lot of wisdom needed to be developed in this path, or needs to be developed. Love the Kalama Sutta. Actually that was, I think, the number one element of the Buddhist path that really attracted me to, that I was like, wow, this seems like worth pursuing. The fact that it's not dogmatic, but that actually, I still remember when the first book I picked up, actually, in a Theravada Thai forest monastery, was a Chan book, and it was a Zen book. And the first thing that I read was, if you think you've seen the Buddha, kill the Buddha. And I was mind blown. I did not know that actually that sentence is particularly controversial, and a lot of people don't quite understand it. But for whatever reason, probably past karmic conditions, I kind of understood it straight away. And I thought, wow, this is such a cool religion that tells you to, constantly question your beliefs and thoughts, which is actually connected to what I believe was either Sally or Gabriella who had asked the question that I was answering to earlier. So constantly questioning your thoughts and beliefs, and not taking even what the Buddha says as just on faith, but as a working hypothesis, and really seeing it for yourself. But also the different ways of, that I love how the Buddha spells out the different ways through which we trick ourselves in believing something. Whether it's someone, whether Bhante, I think he's really smart, so he tells me something and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I believe it because Bhante told me. Or I read in a book, including the Pali Canon that we have here. I read it, I'm like, oh yes, I read it here, it's the law. So having that, or because I like it, I really want to believe that everybody is sweet and lovely and awakened. Well, unfortunately, just because I want to believe in something doesn't mean that it's the reality. So there are different ways through which we, trick ourselves into believing whatever we believe in. And so I found that sutta incredibly useful in my practice. And then the Vasita Sutta, that would be the last one that actually Bhante will be teaching soon in one of the sutta studies. It's one of the best suttas, my favorite. I don't know, actually, whenever I read a sutta, it's my favorite. But but those I really, really like a lot.
Okay, and Key says he would love a lesson in Pali. Well, then you'll have to come and stay with us for a few weeks. Andy is asking, what determines whether or not you take on preceptors? Well, as a layperson, it doesn't really matter so much. You can take precepts from anyone, and it doesn't really matter who exactly. As a monastic, it's a little more significant. You need to be a little more careful. But generally speaking, your preceptor should be someone who you respect, someone who has wholesome qualities that you admire. But they don't need to be perfect. They don't need to be an absolutely perfect monastic. They just need to be someone who you respect, someone who you admire, someone who you value, someone who has qualities that you want to develop. You don't necessarily want to be exactly like them, but they have some qualities that you want to emulate.
I think there's...
Okay, and then there's some excitement about more monk chat.
Great. And Demi asks, faith in needing to take the Buddha's words as a working hypothesis. So I would say that, first of all, it depends in terms of faith. This is the last question, so maybe we can both answer it. So I would say that if you are a born Buddhist, most likely you'll have already incredible faith. So in that case, I think it's good to question, like put the mind towards questioning where your faith is based on. Instead of, that is kind of like the tendency that I've seen, that whatever has been either told by monks, by whatever, the environment, the culture, etc., it's taken at face value and not questioned. So if you're born Buddhist, to actually strengthen your faith through questioning. And if you're a convert, to kind of just cut the questioning at first, and whatever you don't understand, to put it on the shelf. So taking things as a working hypothesis and then going like, what is this thing? I don't have, that sounds really ridiculous, or I really don't understand. I don't have faith. I feel like whatever kind of sort of slight faith I had in the Buddha is totally trembling. Maybe the good idea is to shelf it, put it on the shelf for the time being, and get back to it later. And as you have this approach, you'll see that because you're not going to be able to prove the Buddha wrong, then your faith will start cultivating, because you're going to see that the Buddha is right on a lot of different things. And then you'll go back to the shelf, to what you put on the shelf, and you're going to take it and you're going to go like, oh, okay, now this I understand. Oh, okay, I see how it fits. And then some other things that then you're going to connect the dots, and you're going to go, okay, I see how this could have been, related to this other piece of the puzzle, etc. And then it's this beautiful, the sort of sentiment of faith arises in the mind, and you're really like, have so much confidence in this path. And you start delighting your mind with the Dhamma, with the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, like rejoicing in your choices. But it has to be a gradual path, and you have to be quite honest also with your tendencies of mind in that way. So those are my 4 cents, 5 cents. They keep on multiplying.
Great. So Andy, you said, what determines if you personally take on monastic preceptors? Well, I'm not currently planning to take on any more. So the ones I've already taken on, I had reasons, basically like what I already told you. There's a little bit more to it. So I think if this is something you're considering, as you've mentioned in the past, we should just talk about it one-on-one sometime. Victor asks, why am I okay with Dana and Sila but struggling with Samadhi? Never able to excite me to do Samadhi. Any suggestions, Bhante or Aya? Yeah, it's hard to be excited about samadhi until you get it. This is what's difficult. It's kind of like if you've never had pizza, it's hard to be excited about it. But then you have it once and you're like, oh, that's why people are excited about pizza. Now I understand. And then you start wanting it more and more. So it's similar with samadhi. Before you actually get a taste of samadhi, it's hard to be excited about it. So in that case, draw upon your faith. You have strong faith from what I've seen. So draw upon your faith in the Buddha. The Buddha spoke about samadhi a lot. He highly praised samadhi. He spoke about how pleasant and enjoyable samadhi is. He spoke about how beneficial samadhi is. He spoke about it as being a very critical element of the Noble Eightfold Path, a very critical foundation for developing the insight and wisdom that makes it possible for us to have good sila, that makes it possible for us to practice dana correctly. So drawing upon your faith in the Buddha to build up your willingness to practice samadhi. And also the words that you hear from other teachers. So I can solemnly swear that samadhi feels really amazingly good. I can also attest that samadhi makes your meditation practice way more effective. So practice samadhi for yourself. And as you start getting some strength in your samadhi practice, then you'll understand why it's so highly praised, why it's so important. Okay.
And I'll just add to that that just like with dana, in order to practice dana, you need to do something. So if I have this object, I can't just practice dana by not doing anything. Like, thinking about giving the object, it's really not exciting. I don't think I'm excited about giving. Yeah, really not excited about giving.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. That felt good.
Yay.
So it's not like just by sitting, you're going to go like, see, he's also happy. 2 people happy. So it's not just by sitting that you're like, oh yeah, samadhi, like really doesn't excite me. Wait, let me see if samadhi will excite me. Samadhi, hey, no, it doesn't work. So you need to create the conditions. Just like you create, you're great, you're wonderful, always so thoughtful, Victor, and creating the opportunities to give. You really go for it. You do your best to do that, and then in the same way, try and find opportunities to practice samadhi. So go on retreat, find opportunities to actually go on retreat for long periods of time. And as we said a few days ago, it's much harder to meditate for 5 minutes than it is to meditate for 5 days. It's harder to meditate for half an hour than it is to meditate for 30 days. So go for it. So do at least a weekend retreat, a week-long retreat, 10-day retreat. And then you're going to go like, it's pretty good. Pretty good. Samadhi. Kind of like delicious. It's great. So that's how you start getting excited about it. And then you're like, well, I'm really going to go to Empty Cloud in New Jersey to go and meditate, to practice. So unfortunately, we can't do that right now in the immediate future, but everything is impermanent. Also the virtual retreats. So we will soon, hopefully, eventually have in-house retreats. So I look forward to seeing you here.
Okay, and I think that's it on questions for this evening. Jen says, sometimes I think I will never reach enlightenment solely on my severe attachment to pizza.
Well, great news. Guess what the subject tomorrow on Strong Emotions is?
Pizza?
Well, it's on eating, if I remember correctly. Food for thought. So
Yeah.
here we go. We're going to talk about enlightenment and pizza, two of my favorite things.
Personally, I'm hoping we can get both.
Yeah. Now you're talking.
So I think we'll go ahead and close for the evening. So thank you, Aya, for sharing words of Dhamma.
Thank you, Bhante, for tirelessly teaching and showing the real traits of a good man. So sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. And as Gabriella says, be well and practice well. May all here realize awakening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have a great